Cold morning. We'll just give it some time for people to start popping in and viewing the video. Then we'll go over tonight what we're going to be discussing and talking about. So we'll just give it a minute for people to join. Right. Big boy, good boy. Alright, let's go. So, firstly, thank you for everyone tuning in tonight. Look out, Abraham, and thank you for anyone watching on the replay for joining. Tonight, what we are going to be discussing is the Victorian Crimes Act 1958, Section 462A, which covers the use of force. Then we're going to look at a rally protest that was held about 2 weeks ago here in Melbourne, Victoria, that involved, during a lockdown, some small business owners who were rightfully upset about the lockdown and how it's affecting their business and lack of support from the government. So first off, let's look at the Victorian Crimes Act 1958, Section 462A, use of force, which states, a person may use such force not disproportionate to the objective as he believes on reasonable grounds to be necessary to stop the commission, continuance or completion of an indictable offence, or to effect or assist in effecting the lawful arrest of a person suspected of committing any offence. So to break that down, what we're talking about here, the two big main words are not disproportionate. So what this means is not excessive, not extreme. You cannot use an overuse of force. So the other big parts of this section are reasonable grounds. So you've got to have a belief that you can justify a reason in the use of force, and that it's necessary. You have to show that the force you use and the amount of it is necessary, that you had to use the force and that the amount you used had to be used. And that's what you're using, or what you believe was required to be used in the circumstance at the time you used it. So when we break that down, and we'll first look at not disproportionate. So we'll look at proportionality. So for instance, on the lower end of the scale, someone standing across the street, they're a bit aggressive, they yell out to you, "I'll knock your head off!" Yeah. They make a racist slur or something you find offensive, but there's no intent, okay? They've made a threat, they're across the road. So if you walk across the road and go, "What'd you say?" Boom! Okay, no one would reasonably say that is proportionate. It's certainly not. You've had to cross the street. It certainly ticks off it wasn't necessary either. If we up the scale a bit, someone's pointing a finger at you like this, depending on how close they are, so if they're several metres back and there's distance between you and you back off, not bad. If you have to walk in, push it and push them, you're starting to cross a line. Now, if they're right in your face like this, and you sort of just push the hand away, give them a shove, people would consider that to be pretty proportionate within the reason, within the circumstance, and pretty fair. If, for instance, they're in your face, they're pointing like this, and the first thing you do is push the hand, grab the back of the head, headbutt them, bite them, and start gouging eyes. Again, it's going to be very hard to prove that that was proportionate to any reasonable person. Anyone with reasonable judgment is going to go, that is too much. So the big thing is, whenever you're going to use force, and it is legal to use force in the right circumstance, is that it has to be proportionate. Now, on reasonable grounds, okay, so when we're talking about using force, there's two reasons you can use it. So you're talking about an indictable offence, which is a serious offence. We're talking murder, high-end assault, high-end theft. You can use it for summary offences too, like minor theft. But the big thing is serious offences, really, and necessary. So reasonable grounds, for instance, if I see, when I'm working in security, someone walks in, they're very dishevelled, they've got the tracky dacks on, they just look dodgy. Okay, so I don't have reasonable grounds to use any force just because I look at him and go, probably going to steal something. But that's a belief. It's not based on anything besides the way the person's looking. I could be very wrong. There's no reasonable grounds to walk up, to accuse anyone, or to use any force. Now, for instance, I then see them stick something up their shirt or down their pants. I now have reasonable grounds to believe this person is probably going to steal something. Furthermore, if they start walking towards the exit and I step in front and say, no, sir, wait, need you to remove this item, I now have reasonable grounds to start making assessments and judgments. And certainly if they start getting aggressive or a threat, then you've got that reasonable grounds to use force. And necessary, of course, is you're out of options. You cannot go elsewhere, you cannot diffuse it in other ways. So here with necessary, you're looking at, say, someone takes a car spot and there's a bit of yelling. It's not really necessary to go in, kick in people's bonnets and punch them. However, if you've, say, drove into a car spot and not realised someone else had their eye on it or whatever, they approach you, they've come in, they're angry, the chest's up, they're screaming, their fists are clenched, they're in at you like this, especially if they wind up, you're sort of there, it's pretty necessary to start defending yourself if you cannot get away, otherwise you're going to get hit. So they're the big things when you break down Section 462A, the use of force, what really makes it happen. So now we're going to start talking about looking at the event in Melbourne and how that ties in with 462A with the arrest of this woman from the police officer. So a bit of background is, as I said earlier, there was a couple of weeks ago we in Melbourne had a lockdown, so no one was meant to be out on the streets. Small business owners did hold a little rally protest and were, I suppose you could say, rightly upset. Their business is shut down, they're losing revenue again, this time without job seekers and financial supports and stuff. So obviously tensions were high, people were upset, and let's get it straight off the bat. Being angry, being upset is neither reasonable grounds or an offence. People are allowed to be angry. It's an emotion and it is a normal, healthy emotion at times. People are allowed to be upset. So, they've held this rally. And what's happened is, what you're looking at to paint a picture is you've had a few people as part of the rally. None of them were particularly, or they certainly weren't making threats of violence. They weren't presenting as threatening towards police. So even the female or a couple of females ended up arrested, but the one in the photo that I posted a day or two ago that we're really focusing on talking about, that's brought about this discussion. Yes, very agitated and angry. And again, as we've discussed, rightly so, I suppose, you can argue, very much rightly so. And it is not a crime to be angry. It's not against the law. And again, she wasn't threatening anyone. She wasn't making threats. She wasn't threatening body language or approaching police and making threats or giving an indication that she was, boom, going to attack. Now, as far as reasonable grounds go or necessary for an arrest there, I'm not really going to comment on reasonable grounds or necessary in this particular case because I am not an expert on the Chief Health Officer's directives or the law. I'm really not in a position to comment on whether people should have or should not have been protesting is a personal opinion, one of which I really don't feel the need to give my personal one. As far as the reasonable grounds and necessity from the point of police to arrest people protesting under the lockdown is, again, that's a matter of personal opinion for people, and people are entitled and have the right to have either or opinion either way. So I'm going to give that one a wide berth there. I'm just going to look at the proportionality of what was used during the arrest and the techniques. So, as I discussed, the woman was angry and agitated, and rightly so, but not threatening. Again, just to quickly recap, you've had some protesters, not threatening. What you've got is a high amount of police. I mean, like, saturated with police. They've set up their line with backups behind the line. So you're talking a lot of officers are very much outnumbering the protesters who are not threatening towards the officers. They've all got their tools and their backup. Generally what's happening here is the police open up the lines. I believe it was Port who come out, pluck people off one by one and arrest them. Now, as they've gone for this woman, now what's happened, they've come out, they've gone for the arrest. As you see in the photo, at some stage, it's ended up like a hand around her throat. It's hard to tell from the photo. It looks like the fingers are a bit under her scarf. And what you can see in her face is a grimacing, you can see it's a discomfort. It's hard to tell from a photo. I couldn't find the video, unfortunately, but it certainly appears from the motion of the body language. The arm on an angle like this, a very strong angle, pushed in, the look on her face. I would suspect there was fingers or a thumb being dug in by the carotid or the windpipe area, and probably a squeeze by the look of it. And what you see is her hand clasped onto the officer like this. Which, look, in all fairness, if you grab me by the throat like that, I'm going to yank at your arm too. I want that off my throat. I don't think that was unfair on her part at all. In fact, I think that was highly reasonable. What I think was an overuse of force was a grab on the throat. I think it was unnecessary. I don't believe it was required to grab a throat to make an arrest of a woman. I think there were much other better techniques that could be used. I would have highly suggested the old push-pull technique where you had a hand on the shoulder and a push. So what you're looking to do is displace the balance of the body, which you can do from certain blocks. Namely, knees, hips, shoulders are very good for it. But when you grab the shoulder, push the shoulder, turn the body, where you can then start looking at restraining, pulling the person back. Backup can come out and support you. Another option would have been an arm drag, where you grab the arm, you can either grab it or swipe it and slip an arm in. You're looking at coming under their arm and grabbing by the tricep area just above the elbow. So if you slip, you sort of catch on the elbow, like that, slip the arm in, grab by the tricep area. From here, depending on how big or little you are and your opponent is and what you try and do and how combative they are and stuff, you can either, so for someone like me, I'm 120 odd kilos, so I tend to just pull people into me and wrap up. If you're doing that to me and you're 60 kilo, I would suggest using me or the person you're doing it to as an anchor, where you then, instead of trying to move them, you move yourself. You pull into them and come around, wrap up, restrain, pull down. Now, ordinarily, in defence of the police here, I will say, you don't give your back to the enemy. Not that the protesters were threatening towards the police, but that being said, in volatile situations like that, and I've been in many, they can change like that at the click of a finger. So, in defence of the police, I'd say a little bit of a risky move. But that being said, also, they had plenty of backup who could shoot out from the lines, set the defensive perimeter to get back to the others as you pivot back around, pull the person back between the lines, which would have been, if you had to make the arrest on reasonable grounds, and it was necessary to make that arrest, and I'm not going to give a personal opinion on that. I'm just saying, if it was, that would have been a much more appropriate use of your force that was more proportionate. Now, having grabbed the throat or the neck of the woman, it appears like they didn't hold it for long. No serious damage was done. It wasn't an excessive overuse of force, but I would consider it a bit of an overuse of force. I would consider it inappropriate, and I would have considered much better options available and usable that should have been used and done. So it's unfortunate, but that is my assessment and take on the situation there, and that's my personal belief in that situation. People are entitled to make up their minds on that, but I just believe unless... Sorry people. Down boy, I'll be with you in a minute. I do believe grabbing the throat, you can do a lot of damage if you squeeze hard enough in the right spots, and you can do damage quickly. If you cut off the blood flow down by the carotids, I mean, you can put someone to sleep about 3 seconds odd if you know what you're doing and you're really good at it. So it does have the potential to be quite an aggressive and very serious move, really. Anyway, that's about all I've got to say about it all for the incident, the use of force under the Victorian Crimes Act. What we will do next week, I want to start looking at the use of force continuum, which is where you start to assess the threat levels of the person or persons, because multiple people does change the dynamic very dramatically, and then the force you would use based on what you're being presented with and how you can scale that up or down according to what you need, and how that ties in with the use of force as law that you're using, and how it helps you justify the use of force that you do use. Because obviously if you are going to be using force, that's all well and good, but if push comes to shove and you end up in court or having to give a police statement, you are going to have to justify the force you use. You know, I felt threatened is really not enough. Your feelings, although they may play a part in what you're saying, is not good enough. I felt is not good enough. What you need to be able to do is justify, I felt threatened because, and then there's got to be a reason with the because. I felt threatened because the person was within a metre of my space. They made threats to hurt and kill. They bladed their body off, put a hand in their pocket, or clenched a fist and wound up ready to hit. Then you start saying, so what I did, because my back was against the wall, I sort of held onto a shoulder and boom, I landed a punch into the throat or the jaw or whatever you've hit. You know, I've turned the person around, slammed them into the wall, pushed off, and stepped back to escape. So what you're doing there is you're giving the reason, like you're justifying your use of force. And depending again on whether they've got weapons, multiple attackers, scaling up and down. So next week we'll look more into that, tying it in with the use of force and the law, and how that all works, and how you can justify if you ever have to use force. So I hope that you've found this informative, or that you've learned something and it's helped a little bit and helped clear some stuff up. As always, drop us a line. We're happy to answer questions, queries. So until next time, please look after yourselves, look after each other, stay safe, and thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time.